Welcome in, everyone. NFL Week 11 is here, and maybe because we're getting deeper into the season, I feel we're starting to get a better picture of who these teams are and who they aren't, and that's why I'm making picks on almost every game this weekend, it seems like. I've got 3 4-game parlays for NFL Week 11. Now, while you're listening, if you're liking this NFL content, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more picks all season long. Let's get into the first parlay, and this one is pretty straightforward. We're going money lines and alternate spreads on many of the biggest favorites that we have this week, starting with the Cowboys and the Panthers. The Cowboys, they beat up on bad teams. They have wins over the Giants, 40-0, Jets, 30-10, Patriots, 38-3, Rams, 43-20, and the Giants again last week, 49-17. Now this just in, the Panthers are also a bad team. They're 1-8 straight up, and they're 1-6-2 ATS. They have losses to the Falcons, 24-10, Seahawks, 37-27, the Lions, 42-24, the Dolphins, 42-21, and the Colts, 27-13. In the past 3 weeks, the Panthers have scored 13, 13, and 15 points. That's not enough to hang with Dak and the Cowboys, who are averaging just under 30 points per game at 29.9. They're the second highest scoring team in the league. We'll go Dallas to win to kick off this parlay. Next up, Raiders and Dolphins. Miami, they also are a bully. They also beat up on bad teams. And Las Vegas, despite being 5-5, they are also a bad team. They're 27th in points per game, and they have a minus 33 point differential. I don't put much stock into wins over the Giants and Tommy DeVito and the Jets and Zach Wilson. The Raiders have already have lopsided road losses this year by 28, 18, and 12 points. The Dolphins already have big home wins this season of 50, 15, 21, and 14 points. So Miami by 12, 13, 13.5, 14. It's not really that big of a number for the Dolphins to cover. They should blow out this Raiders team, but they certainly, if you were to bet them all the way down to minus 3.5 in this parlay, should certainly cover that. Third leg of this parlay, we're going to the Bears and the Lions. Justin Fields looks to be returning from a thumb injury, but Chicago wasn't that great with him earlier this season anyways. He also could be rusty, having been off since October 15th. Jared Goff, meanwhile, is 5th in the league in passing, and he just carved up another poor secondary last week in the Chargers, throwing for 333 yards and 2 touchdowns. Detroit is the league's 6th highest scoring offense at 26.8 points per game, and they should take advantage of a Bears defense that is 27th in points per game allowed and 26th in passing yards allowed. Detroit is 7-2 straight up in ATS, and I see that continuing this week. But just in case Detroit gets caught looking ahead to Thanksgiving, let's take Detroit all the way down on the alternate spread for plus 3.5. And the final leg of this parlay will go to Tampa Bay and San Francisco. Now, Tampa Bay got a win last week, but that came at home versus rookie QB Will Levis, 20-6, and it was their first win in 5 games. San Fran was finally healthy last week and coming off a bye where they had lost 3 straight prior to that. They went on the road and they routed Jacksonville, who were previously 6-2, by a 34-3 score. They outgained Jacksonville 437-221. They held Trevor Lawrence to just 185 passing yards and forced him into 2 interceptions. Meanwhile, Brock Purdy threw for 296 yards and 3 touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey combined for 142 yards, but did see a 17-game touchdown streak come to an end, and George Kittle topped 100 yards receiving with 111 and 1 touchdown. San Fran, the 12-point favorites here. We won't take that, but we will throw them into this parlay on the money line. They look to be back after last week's big win. So Dallas win, Tampa Bay win, Miami minus 3.5, Detroit plus 3.5. That looks like it should be pretty safe. We'll go minus 115 odds on that 4-game parlay. And parlay number 2, this one is going to go all over the map with some touchdown props, some alt spreads, and some alt totals, starting with the Cardinals and the Texans. Now, prior to Kyler Murray's return, Arizona had scored 10 or more points in 7 or 9 games. They were only averaging those 16.77 points per game, which is not good, but it would have often been enough to cover certain types of prop bets, like both teams to score 10 or more points, 15 or more points, or both teams to score 2 touchdowns in a game, as they had also allowed an average of 26.66 points per game in those games. Now, last week, Murray returned from an ACL surgery, and they also got back starting running back James Conner from the IR, and Arizona won 25-23 at home to Atlanta. Now, that looks good, but it is Atlanta, not one of the top teams in the league. Now, Murray, he didn't throw any touchdowns, but he had 249 yards passing in his return, and he did rush for 1 score, which is what he's known for. He also found wide receiver Trey McBride for 131 of those yards, and Conner added 73 rushing yards on the ground. Still, despite holding the combo of Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder to 94 yards passing, the Falcons were still in the game. They got 2 rushing touchdowns, and Heineke had 1 passing touchdown himself. Arizona are 28th in points per game allowed, so it's hard to see them on the road holding the likely Rookie of the Year in C.J. Stroud and the Texans in check. Houston's last 2 games have seen them win 30-27 to Cincinnati and 39-37 at home to Tampa Bay. Now, Stroud has thrown for a combined 826 yards and 6 touchdowns with just 1 interception in those games. That Cincy game, though, was just 10-7 at the half. Now, that still, though, means that they've given up 64 points in those last 2 games. As good as they have looked offensively, they're still giving up points. And their defense is just 16th in points per game, allowing 21.3. Last week, Houston had 23 players on the injury report. It's a more manageable number this week, but it still does include the likes of Damian Pierce, Henry To'oto, Denzel Perriman, who's suspended, and Jimmy Ward in the secondary, also looking like he'll be doubtful to play this game. I see points in this game. I think you can go a lot of different routes. I think maybe Arizona could even pull an upset or at least cover. I do think we could see an over. I think we could see both teams to score 10 or 15 points, possibly both teams to score at least 2 touchdowns if we are going to see a lot of points. If we want to go safer, we can create a same-game parlay for the first leg of this bigger parlay and go Arizona to score at least 1 touchdown, Houston to score at least 2 touchdowns. That's what I'll do for this first leg. Next, it's Chargers and the Packers. Now, both the Chargers and the Packers have each seen 5 of their 9 games finish with score lines between 4 points or less. The Chargers, despite being 4-5, only have 1 loss by more than that, and that was losing by 14 in Kansas City, so no shame there. Green Bay is 3-6. They have only 1 win in 6 games, and that was 20-3 over the Rams with Brett Rippon at QB and no Matthew Stafford. Green Bay has averaged just 16.7 points per game in those 7 games, and they've scored 20 points just twice in those 7 games. The Chargers had a scare with Keenan Allen getting injured, an injured AC joint last week, but he did return to the game, and he says he's good to go on Sunday. I can't trust either of these teams on a week-to-week basis to win a game or cover a spread, and certainly not to win by margin. So I'm going to flip the Chargers from -3 to +7.5. I think they are just the slightly better team, certainly have the better quarterback, have the best wide receiver, and even if they find a way to screw it up, they shouldn't lose by more than a touchdown. Chargers +7.5. Next, it's the Steelers and the Browns. And where are the points going to come from in this game? I'm just not so sure. Cleveland may be 5-4 to the over, but Pittsburgh is 7-2 to the under this season. Cleveland's scoring 23.8 points per game. That's 11th. Pittsburgh scoring 17.3. That's way down at 26th. Cleveland allows 18.9 points per game. That's 6th. Pittsburgh allows 20.2 points per game, which is 11th. Now, it's also no longer Deshaun Watson or P.J. Walker at QB for Cleveland. It's rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson. DTR started 1 game this season, and he was just 19 of 36 for 130 yards and 3 INTs. Kenny Pickett for Pittsburgh hasn't thrown for over 200 yards in any of the last 3 weeks. He also has just 1 touchdown in the last 4 weeks. He has just 6 touchdowns on the year. The positive, he also only has 4 INTs because Pittsburgh just plays it very safe with many short passes and all to the outside of the field. Pickett is also just 25th in air yards per throw at 7.1. Then there's a stat everyone likes to talk about, and that's the fact that Pittsburgh has been outgained in all 9 games this season, but somehow, some way, they still have a winning record. That does have to end at some point. Browns will have the best unit on the field in this game with their defense. They'll play a slow, safe game plan for DTR and hope their defense can do their thing to get the win. Pittsburgh, they always play it safe, and that's probably going to stay the same here. The total here seems to be reaching almost historic lows of just 33.5. What if we go alternate total, bet that all the way up to 45.5? That looks very safe. I don't see how these 2 teams can get close to 50 points. We'll go under 45.5. Next, it's Sunday Night Football, and it's the Vikings and the Broncos. This is 2 teams riding winning streaks right now, with Minnesota winning 5 in a row and Denver winning 3 in a row. Minnesota is now 6-4, and they are on a 5-0 ATS run. Denver's 4-5, and they're on a 3-0 ATS run. Josh Dobbs is 2-0, undefeated right now with Minnesota, and he and TJ Hawkinson had career days last week versus the Saints. This week, they could also welcome back wide receiver Justin Jefferson. Denver could be coming in off a short week, having played on Monday Night Football, beating Buffalo 24-22. They did, though, need 4 Buffalo turnovers and do-over winning field goal with a Buffalo penalty after they had actually missed the game-winning field goal. But Buffalo had too many players on the field. They got to kick it again and got the win, so that very easily could have been a loss last week. Now, Minnesota's 4 losses this season have come by 3, 6, 4, and 7 points, and that 7 was against Kansas City. Denver's 3 wins have come by 3, 2, and 2 points. So if Denver wins, they're not winning by much. When Minnesota loses, they're not losing by much. Dobbs hasn't thrown a pick in his last 2 games with Minnesota, and he only has 5 all season long, so Denver may not be able to get the turnover help this week. Denver is also 7-15-1 ATS in their past 23 games when they are a favorite. They are a favorite in this game at about 2.5 points. I think Minnesota could win this game, but on the road, in prime time, anything can happen, and the Dobbs magic will eventually run out. Will it run out to the tune of Minnesota by losing by more than 10? I don't think so. You can take Minnesota on a teaser. You can take them on an alternate spread. I'm going to make them plus 10.5 underdogs to round out this parlay. So it's Minnesota plus 10.5. Pittsburgh, Cleveland on the alternate total under 45.5. Chargers alternate total plus 7.5. And Houston, Arizona creating a same game parlay. I did this at Bet365 where you can create a same game parlay and then add it to other games. Houston to score at least 2. Arizona to score at least 1 touchdown. That comes in at minus 120. There's one more parlay to go here. And remember, if you're liking this content, please hit that like button. Let me know what your games are that you're liking, what your picks are in the comments down below as well. Parlay number 3, I've got 2 touchdown favorites that I'm turning into underdogs. One game where I'm going both teams to score at least 10, and a same game parlay on Monday Night Football. Let's start it off with the Titans and the Jaguars. Jacksonville right now are 7-point home favorites. Now they had won 5 straight. They went on a bye. They came out of that streak, and that bye, and that streak ended with a thud as they lost 34-3 to San Fran. I'm looking for a rebound this week. Vrabel may be 29-21-1 ATS as a dog, but he has a rookie QB in Will Levis going on the road. Levis looked good in his debut with 4 touchdowns, but since that time, in the 2 games since, he has 0 touchdowns. Tennessee lost 20-6 last week. They have 4 losses in 5 now. Maybe Tennessee uses Derrick Henry, lean on him, but Jacksonville is 5th in the run defense, so they might be able to slow that down as well. Jacksonville should win this game. Money line is probably good enough, but surely plus 4.5 at home against a rookie quarterback will work as well. Jacksonville plus 4.5. Let's do the exact same thing with the Jets and the Bills. The Bills are also 7-point home favorites, but which team here is in more of a mess and more of a free fall is really hard to tell. Buffalo lost on Monday Night Football. They've lost 3 straight. They're 0-6 ATS of late as well. They just fired OC Ken Dorsey. They are the 2nd worst team in turnovers with 18, and Josh Allen leads the league in interceptions with 11. Now, it's very likely he gets picked off here again versus an elite Jets defense that is 6th in yards per game allowed and 6th in points per game allowed. But then the Jets haven't scored a touchdown in 11 quarters or 36 possessions themselves. They are 30th in points per game, 29th in yards per game, and 30th in passing yards per game. You could probably bet on interceptions or maybe field goals if you were looking at different props in this game or to create a same game parlay. I still think the Bills at home and looking to avenge a week 1 loss where they lost to the Jets after Aaron Rodgers got injured. They should at least, because they score some points and the Jets don't, should be able to at least get the win. So again, you could probably go money line on a Bills win, but somehow I could also see maybe the Jets smothering Josh Allen, creating a ton of turnovers, and maybe pulling another unlikely upset. Possibly. But can I see Zach Wilson going on the road and winning by more than 4? I definitely do not. The Jets just do not know where the end zone is right now. We'll turn Buffalo into a 4.5-point underdog as well for the second leg. And the third leg, let's go to the NFC West, and it's the Seahawks and the Rams. Outside of losing 37-3 to Baltimore and beating the Giants 24-3, both teams have scored at least 10 or more in every Seattle game this year. Last week, they beat Washington 29-26, and they're now 6-3. The Rams are 3-6, and they have lost 3 straight. They lost 20-3 in their last game, but that was without the injured Matthew Stafford. They, too, outside of that game and won 26-9 win over Arizona. Their other 7 games have also seen both teams scoring at least 13 or more points in all those games. Matthew Stafford is back here. They should get 10. I don't trust their defense to not allow 10. Historically, when these teams play, both teams have scored 10 or more games in 6 of the past 6 and 11 of the past 12. We'll go both teams to score 10 or more between the Seahawks and the Rams. And finally, let's head to Monday Night Football. It's the Super Bowl rematch that saw KC win 38-35 back in February. But I think the score will be lower this time. So do the odds makers, as it's set at 45.5 on the total. Now, Philadelphia is 8-1, KC is 7-2, so we should see another good one, though. Generally, it's hard to bet against Andy Reid off a bye or Patrick Mahomes when the weather starts to get a little bit colder. Reed is 25-6 straight up off a bye. Mahomes is 30-1 straight up in his last 31 games when playing in November or December. Only 4 Philly games have gone into the 50s this season. Last game versus Dallas, where there was 51 points, and twice versus Washington, and once versus Minnesota. Now, 3 of those 4 games have some common trends. Washington has a good offense and a poor defense. Sam Howell actually leads the league in passing yards. Minnesota's defense has improved in recent weeks, but back in September when these teams played, it wasn't very good, and Kirk Cousins was still there, hucking the ball around, and he had Justin Jefferson. KC is none of those things. They'll always be able to score with Mahomes and Kelsey, but they have no deep threat this season, and they've been much more of a dink-and-dunk offense this year. They also have a defense that is tied with San Fran, giving up the fewest points per game, and is 4th in yards per game allowed. KC, they've been almost a dead nuts under team this season at 7-2. If you look at their games, only 1 went into the 50s, and that was a 41-10 win over Chicago way back in September. The next highest point total in any KC game this season has been 48. Even in Germany versus one of the top offenses in Miami, who are also weak defensively, the score was still just 21-14. Then there's the fact that primetime unders have been 25-8. Monday Night Football alone has been 11-1 to the under. Then there's also this stat. Since 2018, with both teams coming off of a bye, which is the case here, under is 101, 47-1, and it's also 25-5 this season. Add in some potential rain and wind, and this looks like it could be an under all on its own. Like we like to do in these parlays, we want to make things a little bit easier. We'll go under 56.5 on the alt total to give us a little more buffer. All that said, I also do think both teams can at least score 10 points here. They both average over 20 points per game. So this will be a same game parlay under 56.5, both teams to score 10 or more, and we'll pair that up with Jacksonville plus 4.5, Buffalo plus 4.5, Seahawks and Rams both to score at least 10, and we'll get minus 104 odds there. So there we go, picks from 12 different games this weekend. Hopefully lots of stats and trends to consider whether you want to follow or fade these picks. Either way, drop your picks in the comments. Let me know what you're betting on, and best of luck in NFL Week 11 this weekend.